Hey kids, howdy, and welcome once more to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. It is August 25th, so we are in the last week of August, and it's how should I say this? It's a relatively gentle week with the exception of one of the big outer planetary, hits that makes the end of this month a little bit rough. How you doing there so far?
I'm okay. I've had these weird, literally last night, I woke up this morning and I've been having these anxious dreams and I'm having anxiety, generalized anxiety in having trouble going to sleep. And then the last few nights I wake up and I'm like, that dream was not, that was not restful. Why was I stressed out? I've been asleep, but I've been stressed out for 8 hours.
I mean, you and I know each other pretty well, and I certainly know, we both have generalized anxiety, so this is greater than what you're used to.
Oh, because my anxiety is medicated, So it's
so is mine.
Of course it's present, but I'm fine.
Okay, so hang on a second. I'm clicking in the backdrop here. I'm going to look at your chart for this month, because I want to say something about dreams, because I've been a little, I've been a little overwhelmed, but no, it's not been overwhelming at all. My mouth is so dramatic. It's been really interesting to see lots and lots and lots of comments about people who are both having trouble sleeping and having extra wacky dreams. So I just looked at your August, and Zoe, your entire August should be very extra anxious.
Great.
Mercury was hitting your chart, but both retrograde, now direct as well. In agitations, there's 4 different agitating Mercury hits that pepper the beginning, the middle, and the end of the month. So that explains your elevated anxiety at the moment. But it's been interesting to hear about dreaming being sort of up in a big way, and that makes sense to me. The planet that rules dreams is Neptune. Neptune's natural ruler is Pisces. Pisces is the sign through which we experience dreams and connection to source. So Neptune hanging out in Pisces for, 15 years would have kept our relationship to dreaming very Piscean. Very mindful, very demure, very,
pleasant dreams.
All sorts of dreams, but they would sort of stay in dream world more.
Got it.
Because the dream world was open for business. Mm-hmm. Once Neptune moved into Aries, now ideologies, beliefs, dreams, inspiration, creativity is on fire. And it is since Neptune moved into Aries a few months ago that I have noticed this plethora of dream comments on social media.
Interesting. So it's not just me.
No, it's not just you.
Anxiety.
It's everybody.
It's the dream world.
This shift is impacting lots of different things, including what I'm hoping is more activation out there in the political landscape. And there was a big event in Congress when Neptune moved into Aries. That very day was that 24-hour, filibuster thing. Because now, again, beliefs and ideologies on fire. Both sides of any divide, by the way, are on fire with their beliefs.
Right.
But, I was going to talk about, but pitch my class going deeper, the shadow class where we use mythology and fairy tales to do a specific kind of dive. It's still shadow work, but by using a fairy tale and a myth, you can take the specific themes that are in there and look at, specific childhood experiences. Like Hansel and Gretel isn't just about the witch who almost eats the kids, but like there's agency described, like how were you as a kid, sort of safe at home, if you were, and how did you learn how to tether out? Maybe the witch represents your disowned spirituality. But it's the myth of Demeter and Persephone where something very interesting happened in my marketing. So Demeter and Persephone is the second half of class where we flip all the myths. We look at every side of it, and we're certainly going to pay attention to Persephone becoming queen of the underworld. And we look at issues of separation and control by looking at Demeter's story. So pitch over, please come and take this class if this sounds interesting to you. It starts on Saturday for 4 Saturdays. It's such a yummy, fun, and juicy
Michael,
dive.
this is always you have a weird or like you have a somewhat charged response to this class? Or
Well,
this is
no,
this
never.
time?
This is what's interesting. So there's an email that's been used every time I've done this class. It turns into social media posts as well. And it's where I show the statue, The Rape of Prospina. And the title of the email is something like, Learn to Work with Active Imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So active imagination is when you would look at that statue and just let it impact you. Like, what do you see? What do you feel? Are you triggered? Right, so I'm writing an email trying to describe that process, and I have a sentence in there that's like, what's the rape? Is the rape good? Is it, how do I as a man have to think about my predatory nature? Passion, rape.
Big word.
Well, I get that they're big and juicy words, but it's about active imagination. That's what I want people to do by reading the email. And in fact, 3 women on Facebook did have a shadow class response. They got very triggered. They posted it. And I had to very gently say, I think this is a good reflection of a shadow experience, right? It's, and nobody's responded. There was an email from someone that was very unhinged about it. And Lisa said to me while we were chatting about me being baffled by why now, she said, why do you suppose this is happening now? And out of my mouth, I just said, oh, it's Neptune in Aries. These are people who have a belief and ideology that rape is so finitely awful that it doesn't deserve to be investigated in a positive way. Though it's not positive in shadow work, it's dark and scary. That's the point of the work, but not everybody wants to do that in the world of rape.
Sure.
And so now when someone is hit by a belief or an ideology being challenged, the response is likely to be more fiery. Now, we're going to be talking about Saturn moving into Pisces today, and eventually we'll be talking about Neptune following suit. And so we'll be spending more time in that floaty, dreamy territory for a few months before they both move into Aries again in earnest next year. And all of the hot summer chaos will return in earnest. We talked about this briefly at the end of last week's podcast, but like today, tomorrow-ish is the moment when Mercury completes his entire cycle. It's the third act is over, and Mercury moves into his free and clear period for like 2 months. You can sort of think as that beginning on Tuesday-ish. The reason why I'm being fuffety about the timing is that it's 15 degrees and 34 minutes of Leo is the exact place that he turned around at when he went retrograde. So he gets to that same place, 15 degrees, 34 minutes at 1:40 a.m. Tuesday Pacific time. So that's a couple of hours after midnight on Tuesday, and then we're done. So I don't know that these few days will be rougher in a Mercury way based on what I'm about to talk about, but it might be. So here's what I have to say. The Mercury retrograde itself was more personally challenging to all of us because Mercury wasn't tethering to any other planets while he was going backward. Like Zoe, the way Mercury was
And
hitting
that
you
provides stability, or?
well, what I think it does is it provides, yes, that connection and geometry from the moon to other planets does imply, I'd call it the stability of conversation. Right? They may not be happy with each other when they're making the triple transits if it's an opposition or a square or a sesquisquare, but they're talking. So if Mercury's not speaking to any other planet, then he's off on his own, more chaotic and unstable for us at the personal level. Now, your August is rough because Mercury was hitting your chart like gangbusters, 5 or 6 different ways. So everybody out there who might have wanted to understand why the Mercury was so rough, the retrograde was so rough, you might need to know your personal chart because it might have been directly related to the transits on your chart more than the global transits. But Mercury is literally making contact with the outer planets in these first 3 days. So that just as we can look up at the sky and say, woohoo, Mercury's over with the difficult process, on Monday, today, Mercury is sesquisquaring Saturn, and tomorrow he sesquisquares Neptune, and on Tuesday, he sextiles Uranus. So that means that today and tomorrow and into Wednesday, there's a lot of mental constriction. Today, it's more likely going to be about blockages and delays and breakdowns. Tomorrow, it's more likely to feel like confusion and cloudiness and uncertainty. A sextile to Uranus adds a dynamism to communication and thought, but you have to combine the interpretation to include the agitations. So those agitations get made more sort of electrified by a sextile to Uranus on Tuesday. And then it finishes off on Wednesday with a beautiful explosive opposition from Mercury to Pluto. That's more might be revealed. Stuff from the underworld comes up for, awareness and review. So it's fascinating that while he was backwards and in his wrap up, there was no connection to the outer planets. But now I want you to sort of imagine, this is my sort of archetypal wrap up of this. I started, I've been talking about the Leo archetype for, ad infinitum, that it started with Mars in the fall, retrograding us, helping us step up more into our centered self. Mercury retrograde was doing the same thing with our voice. We were in the Leo mansion for a bit with a new moon in Leo while Mercury was retrograde. And now that he's done, well, with the exception that Venus is moving into Leo, just for the sake of what I'm presenting to you now, just pretend we're done. We're done with a sense of getting our walk and our talk aligned with the archetype Leo that allows us to shine brightly out there in the world. And just as we're sort of given our certificate of graduation, this week is going to confront us all of perceiving the world as the world is on its own terms. And it'll be fascinating just to see what you're thinking about and how you're perceiving things in the first part of this week. So Venus in Leo is also touching the outers just like Mercury, only the geometry is lovely.
That's nice.
So just as mind is very constricted the first couple of days of the week, you have to add into that in terms of understanding what the week might feel like, that on Tuesday, the planet of love and money moves into Leo and will trine Saturn immediately. That's an energy that hits today into tomorrow. When Venus is in a trine with Saturn. We have stable emotional bodies. Feelings are sort of doled out a little at a time. And since Saturn is always bringer of delays and breakdowns, if you find something that's important to you gets delayed in these first couple of days of the week, count on it to have been a beneficial delay, because that's one of the artifacts of Venus in a trine with Saturn. And then moving a little further, tomorrow, like today into tomorrow, there's the perfection of Venus trining Neptune. That's love in the heart in flow with love of the divine. This is the love is love is love is love is love transit. And that gets added to anything that we're learning from Saturn slowing us down. Also on Tuesday, Venus will sextile Uranus, which is excitement, rebellious attitude towards love, intimacy, and finances. It's the shoot your shot energy for sure. So if that's up for you, shoot your shot. When we move into Wednesday, that is when Venus will oppose Pluto. And this, talk about shooting your shot. This is about obsession in relationships, territorial disputes, jealousy, sexual tension, all of the way that shadow and power struggles can come into relationship will layer in to this sort of Venus, party. These are conflicting energies, especially the trine to Neptune and the opposition to Pluto. So even though they come on different days, you got to think of this as one heartfelt moment where we need to slow down and take stock of what we've learned about love, trust the delays if they're there, move into a sense of love is all there is. Let yourself get excited by that, but also know that none of us get to have the love we desire without looking into the basement of our shadow and do some processing there so that we're not pushing love away because of unconscious fears and emotional patterns. As promised, July and August, we're going to be hot. By hot, I mean big change, sudden change, revolutionary change, and, everything at breakneck speed and happening all at once. You can turn on the news and see exactly what this means in the outside world, but also understand that everything that's happening outside happens internally through the principle of the collective, right? So we're all undergoing radical revolutionary changes in our individual lives, tempered by, our charts receiving the energy either very in a lovely way or a very difficult way at the individual level. But we're all changing internally to match and meet the changes out there. And the big honkin' energy of sudden shift and change is Uranus and Neptune in a sextile. Uranus brings the lightning flash that makes the revolutionary changes possible. And as we've talked about several times today, Neptune in Aries lights us all up on fire with what we believe in, what our strong motivations might be. And because they're in a sextile, they have the capacity to create great change. Now, I talk about the sextile at the personal level as an angle of potential only, and I say you got to be showing up to the thing in question with behavior in order to benefit from the energy of two planets in a 60-degree relationship. I'm going to let that go for the collective. You might, at the personal level, to take advantage of the creative power and the inspiration that's built into the sextile. Because Neptune carries our creative inspiration as well as our beliefs and ideologies and dreams and the unconscious. And Uranus changes things utterly and quickly. So If you want your life to match such inspired sudden shifts, you have to pick up behaviors this week that are about putting things out into the world that you're working on, and let the world sort of respond to that with this fairly exciting energy. But it's air and fire, that's combustible. Uranus, I think, is particularly chaotic in Gemini because it's mutable air, and Uranus relates to air. Like his ruling sign, Aquarius, is fixed air. So there's a lot of instability with the Great Awakener in the sign of the Twins. And then Neptune in Aries is ready to, light things on fire based on deeply held beliefs and inspirations. I don't think the world needs to pick up behaviors to match this sextile, because the world is already behaving in a manner that allows for chaotic sudden change, all of which might be driven by beliefs and ideologies, no matter how foolish those may be. Okay, so that energy is Thursday. So that's when you can expect this sort of shakeup. But we also have this week on Sunday, the first, let's call it relief moment. Now, I cannot speak from direct experience about what it's going to feel like to have both Saturn and then later Neptune move back into Pisces, because it's just not your standard or typical ingress. In years past, if there weren't all this other stuff going on and Saturn was retrograding back into a sign he's leaving, I would just say one of the moments of the crisscrossing of Saturn weaving back between Pisces and Aries, the lessons are going to go from connecting to what's inside of you that wants to be expressed. And Saturn in Aries sort of says, are you stepping up with action to express it? So I would say Saturn moving back into Pisces is going to put us all into that more internal experience of responsibility, lessons, and learning how to do the right thing. My hope is that since there's been so much chaotic, sudden things peppering our walk these last few months, that Saturn moving back into Pisces will dampen some of those fiery impulses, and then when Neptune does the same and Uranus moves into Taurus, my expectations is that things will feel a little bit more grounded and stable, once we get to October, but we do have eclipse season before that. So I'm promising a little bit of relief by sort of looking at Sunday's, return to Pisces that Saturn is doing. And we will all feel that in some kind of way. But I'm putting it out there that we might have to wait for October and eclipse season to be done before we're going to feel what I'm hoping for is a little more grounded stability for a couple of months as we move through fall and winter. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have someone calling in with their dream. We have Claire calling from Montreal. Hey Claire, what you dreaming?
Hi. Thanks so much for having me. This is a huge honor.
Yay, glad to
So,
have you.
thank you. Thank you. I'm going to share a dream I had in May.
Okay.
So, in this dream, I was at a house party in a really cool apartment. The apartment had two living rooms. One was a drop down room with very high ceilings, and it was full of people dancing and mingling. And the other was a higher, dark living room in the back. So it had a lower ceiling, but in the back. And there I could make out shapes, but not really faces or what people were up to. I kept going back and forth between the two rooms, and not frantically, but socially.
Okay.
I knew in the dream that I wasn't the host, but I seemed comfortable in the role or in taking up the space in this way, and I was attending to folks. At some point, someone pulled me in for a dance in the living room, the higher ceiling, so the sunken living room. She and I danced for a while, kind of suggestively, not with much body contact, but a lot of eye contact. And she was very pretty. I remember she had short cropped hair. She seemed a bit detached and not sure what she wanted. And I remember thinking almost like she was flighty.
Okay.
So she danced around and with others, and eventually I walked away. Then, as I was headed back to the higher, dark living room, someone else pulled me into their arms. This person was a man, but I did get something of a maybe queer disposition or something fluid, but it was absolutely a
A man.
man.
Yeah.
Yes. And he held me. I would say, again, here we had body contact. There was more intimacy and meaning than with the woman on the dance floor. We sat on the steps between the two living spaces. First, with him sitting in front of me, kind of slightly below me on a step, and leaning back, his head on my chest. And I ran my fingers through his hair, which was thick and lustrous and kind of shining like brown and gold. He looked up at me often, and I looked at him. We smiled, but we said nothing. And then in a flash, I was the one sitting, kind of leaning onto him, with, with him stroking my hair. And he held my locks up off my neck, and he stroked the hair and even like off my forehead, around my ear and nape area, as if he was pulling my hair up in a bun, but without ever tying the hair up. And I felt very happy in his arms. I felt comfortable and safe and aroused. And the party raged on around us with a lot of music and laughter, even food. And there was so much palpable joy. But we only sat, again, facing actually the lower dancing room with the darker living room behind us. And I can't remember if we made out, but I got to tell you, I wanted to so bad. And that's where the
And
dream
that's where the dream
ended.
ended. So I sort of have to know to dive in this dream. How do you identify? Are you a queer person? Are you
Yeah,
heterosexual? Okay, so you're a queer
I would
person.
say bi queer.
But
Yeah.
okay. Would you say that you are in waking life more oriented towards women in your intimate experience, or is
I
it
would say more oriented towards men
more? Okay.
historically.
Okay.
Historically, maybe lately, not so much.
Well, this is definitely a dream about like integration, right? You've got the two different rooms. One is light, one is dark, right? And so that
Fair.
right there sets us up to be in the light and the shadow. And I think it's interesting that your first experience is with a woman, but it's when you get with the contrasexual, the man, that's when you have an experience that looks like real integration of masculine and feminine, right? The fact
Yeah.
that there's no talking, to me, is that it's an embodied experience that you're expressing in the dream, not one that you want to think about or talk about because that would ruin it, right? Thought is not
Amazing.
doesn't belong in the land of energetic integration. Right, so I think that's sort of my knee jerk about why it didn't need any speaking. I
Right.
love the image of the flash and the change where you switch places. How more
Yes.
integrated can you get than that?
I know, like taking turns, like the
Taking
Libra in me loves
turns.
that.
You know, in
Mm-hmm.
the yin yang figure, in its purity, it's the sort of the little squiggly white and the
Yes.
squiggly black, but there's a dot of black in the middle of the white and a dot of white in the
Right.
middle of the black. That implies, even though the integration is divided into a kind of binary of masculine and feminine, there's a little piece of the feminine in the masculine and a piece of the masculine and the feminine. And when we live in balance like that, that's when everybody's sort of like cooking with gas. And I don't mean that you have to be
Right.
bi and 50-50. I just mean embodied, right? This isn't just about your queerness. It's about your
Absolutely.
consciousness and a sense of like where you're at with that. Even the
Mm.
parties and the houses suggest to me like a social experience rather than a private one. So this has
Yes.
got to be also reflecting how you're identifying out in the world. And again, not just about your sexuality, but about your humanness.
Yes. Yes.
It's also interesting that the woman in the dream, who I've sort of cast, for better or for worse, into a less important, role,
Mm-hmm.
because the story of the dream tells us that, right? That's why it's not like I'm
Yes.
not diminishing it for my own like opinion about it,
Totally.
but that's where there's like some suggestiveness and, this sort of like. There's more sexuality implied when you were describing the
Mm.
dream with her, and
Yes.
the dream with him transcends that. It's bigger than sex. It's bigger than sensual
Absolutely.
pleasure,
Yeah.
considerably.
It's so tender. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. That's so interesting.
Tell
And
me,
with her,
go ahead.
it's like more mixed messages almost with that interaction. While with him, again, no words, and yet there was a clarity.
Very clear. That's a wonderful distinction between the two. Tell me again, because I just was trying to keep track of the notes, and I'm 60, almost two.
You got it.
I have to type my notes because when I was younger, I could hold a dream in my memory without notes. But in the end, you said you were sitting on steps between the two living rooms, and you were facing one room with your backs to the other, and I don't remember which one.
Yes. We were facing the dancing room, the room that was brighter with the high ceilings. And so the
So the
room that I
shadow
couldn't
room,
make
the dark
out, the
room is
shadow room was behind.
behind you. I even like that because it leaves you in this integrated, powerful state facing the world doing its dance, which is where you should be
Yes.
facing. You've got to be moving into the world, but you've got to have the shadow work at your back. You have to know that somewhere behind you is also the hidden stuff you have to pay attention to, the things you've got to look at so that you stay integrated between masculine and feminine. So I like the fact that you're sitting on steps because that sort of
Yes.
implies that there are different moments and different layers and different steps to where you need to be at times, and that you're
Yes.
facing life and having the integration shadow right where it ought to be. You have, like I describe the shadow as behind us. I usually take my hand, everything has a gesture with me. I'm just like,
Yes, I
right?
love
So,
it.
so when I do the shadow gesture, I take a fist as if that's the disowned material and I put it behind me at my lower back.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
That's where the motor would be if we were a motor boat, right? And you can't see it. But this isn't that. You've been to the shadow. You've
Yes.
integrated what's available so you can sit with it behind you because it's not hidden
Oh,
any
that's
longer.
amazing. That's amazing.
Love this dream.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Claire.
Of course, you got it. Thanks, Michael. Y'all are the best.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.